Hey guys, welcome back to the Excel tutorial Mini-URT. Right, this is the third part, looking at how to manipulate your data in order to make something nice and presentable. You should have already by now, if you're playing with the Greenland ice data, done something very similar to this if you managed to rearrange the equation all right and all as well. In the previous Mini-URT, we only covered a handful of data points, I think maybe 15 data points that are listed here in order to get an idea about formatting and adjusting things along those lines. The Antarctica ice core data goes back a long way, so again come back here and we'll take a look at the last row, which is row number 3316, and the Ice Age data is this column here, and you can see that it is at 422,766 years old. So we're going back a long way. Get to see really cool features like Milankovitch cycles and the Toba explosion and various other neat features of the paleological climate data. Right, so this is the graph that we've made. Very nicely done. If you managed to get this far, fantastic. What we're going to do is expand on the data here, so I can select the data individually, and it's showing me that these are the points that were selected, as well as something very interesting. In the formula bar, it tells me exactly where that data is obtained from. Now, there's two ways of expanding this data set because we want to include all of the data if we can. We can either grab the the blue and the purple lines here, although it's going to be very cumbersome to do, and drag them down, and you can see that not much has changed here. I've got to go back and drag the purple one as well. And I could probably drag it all the way down to the bottom and it would take forever, right? You can see we've expanded the data already. Quite nicely done. A little bit scattered, and we'll look at putting a line through them shortly. An easier way to do this, remember that we are, this data set goes all the way down to row number 3316. If we click here, we get the information regarding that. There are other ways to access this information, by the way, so I'm only telling you one way. You can see here that it's using the string, the $sign, in order to lock these values into place. This is something that's done automatically. And you can see that it ends at B37, which is down here. And the temperature data ends at E37, which is down the bottom here. Let's just cheat a little and put in 3316 here. This takes us all the way down to the bottom of the data set. So 3316. And when I press enter here, bam! Look at that. We've got the entire data set in one little squiggly line here. It looks like an earthworm that went through a coal factory. Now is where things get fun. We want to play around with this because really if you were to put this into a publication of some sort, like your independent project or anything else, there's a good chance someone would say, hey buddy, look at all this white space that you're wasting here. So we're going to play around with the scales. Again, we can right click on the scale here. This will bring up the menu, so you can do all of these various bits and pieces here. Format axis is what we're after, and it opens up the little window on the right hand side here. The bounds, the minimum, so it's going all the way down to -70, and the maximum is going all the way up to 0. We're going to shift that a little bit. Let's take it down to minus maybe 65. Again, this is entirely up to you. Just have a bit of a play, and the minimum is going to be -50. Let's try that out. -50. See what happens. Oh, look at that. Great thing about Excel is that it's giving you a preview as you go. I can drag this along and we can actually see what's happening here. I'll move it back once we've had a bit of a play with the data. So I'm coming across again to where are we? Not to format chart area, but to the axis. The neat thing about Excel and this window that's open here on the right is that it will change according to where I put my mouse. So if I want to play around with the x-axis, I'll move my mouse here and click here, and then it'll change it to format axis for the x-axis. So you really don't have to right click or do anything like that all of the time. Notice that the x-axis has kind of disappeared a little, right? It's kind of vanished in amongst all the data. That's not so good. So we're going to click again on the y-axis as we did in the previous Mini-URT. We're going to go over here to axis options, click on that, expand this action options window here, and then horizontal axis crosses at, and we'll make this -65. And then next thing you know, it's slapped this on the bottom here. Now, notice how you got all these zeros here, because this is real, right? This is 50,000 years, this is 100,000 years, this goes all the way back to 450,000 years. Notice here we've got display units. We can actually change this to thousands, and that actually, whoops, sorry, didn't mean to change the y-axis. Let me just put that back to none. I'm going to select the x-axis instead. It's still retained the same axis options, okay? So that's kind of neat. I've got an x-axis and y-axis, and all it's done is just change these values accordingly. Display units here, go here to thousands, and then ta-da! Okay, not bad looking. There is another way to do this. My preferred way of doing things is that you would go and you would create a new equation in your spreadsheet here for your axis. I'm going to put it over here, I think, and I'm going to call this Ice Age thousands of A. Oops. And I'm going to use a formula equals, and then divide the Ice Age by 1,000. Okay. And then again, I can just double click on this little thing here and it will do, yeah, it looks like it's done the right thing. Looks a bit funny. Remember that now we're dealing with thousands of years. I can select this data and I can just, let me just move the graph out of the way and close this one, just for your benefit. Select the data. I can actually grab the purple bit. Remember the purple bit represents x-axis and slide it over to here. Ta-da, look at that. Okay, change this, format axis, display units, none. And we have almost exactly the same thing as if we change the display units to thousands. And then of course I'd have to go through here, and the SI unit for 1,000 is kilo, so K. There we go, Ice Age in kilo annums, kilo years. So I've done that by using an equation to manipulate the data in order to get something that is a little bit more presentable. If you can do this in your tutorial, I applaud you. You have done fantastically. And remember that this is going back in time, so this is oldest going all the way to the left here to the youngest, which is the correct way of displaying this information, interestingly enough. But it makes doing some trend analysis quite interesting because things are in reverse. Okay, this is a bit smudgy for my liking. We've lost a lot of features, so I'm going to right click on the data series here, and then I'm going to go format data series. Again, it's going to open up the window on the right hand side, and then we're able to do some cool things to it. So again, selecting the data. We're going to go fill and line, and I mean, this is up to you. We can add a solid line to it. It's going to tell you that it's going to take a while, but yeah, whatever. It's fast enough. Add a solid line, and I'm going to get rid of the marker. Again, it's better to hold on to the markers. Maybe you can play around with a little markers, but kind of gets a bit convoluted. But for illustration purposes, I'm going to get rid of the markers. So come here to markers options, and then select none. Come back to line, which is this top menu up here in between line and marker, and change the width to 1 point. Look at that, like a professional. Look at how beautiful that is. Okay, now if you're interested in, if you have been learning about Milankovitch cycles, you can see them quite clearly in this ice theta. Here's your, I think this is your eccentricity, your long 100,000 years, and then you've got little obliquity cycles in between here with that are about 40,000 years, and I actually forgotten what the last one is. Eccentricity, obliquity, and yeah, the third one. Okay, we are interested in taking a look at the subset of the data. Now there are a couple of ways to do this. To begin with, you can right click on the x-axis, and we want to take a look at the last maybe say 100,000 years. Notice the minimum here is 0 and the maximum is 450. These are thousands of years, so we'll just change the maximum to 100. So remember that we are now playing with data that is modified, and this brings, now that I've changed this to 100, this brings the data to within the last 100 years. And you can see that the temperature in Antarctica at the South Pole effectively has bounced up and down for the last little while. And you can see here that we're in a period of warming, and within the last maybe 10,000 years, things are starting to cool off again. Maybe we're heading towards another ice age. Ooh. Alright, of course you can shift this around depending on how you want to play around with the data. So I'm going to come back to the x-axis here and change the minimum to maybe let's look between 100,000 and 150,000. So 150,000, and then it'll show us between 100,000 kilo years ago, 150,000 kilo years ago, and you've got a nice little feature here occurring from 110 to 140,000 years ago. My suspicion is that's an obliquity band. Okay, there is an alternative way to do this, of course. You can actually, and I would recommend this if you're interested in doing regression analysis on your data, you actually, instead of selecting your, changing the x-axis and the y-axis here, what you instead do is select the data that you're interested in. So for example, if you're interested in between the 100 and 150,000 years, go to those 100 and 150,000 years, wherever they may be. I'm just going to scroll up here until we get to them. So there's 150 here, approximately, and then just up to here to 130,000, and then we'll grab the equivalent in, oops, I'm grabbing the wrong thing here. So that's 129,000 down to 130, and then grab the temperature equivalent, sliding up down to here, and then plotting yourself another graph. Have a play with this, guys. It's really good to get familiar with Excel in this particular way. And again, you've got to go through and do all your formatting things. Of course, Excel can be a little bit painful at the best of times, so do remember to save. Either on the top left hand side here, you have the little diskette. It even gives you the shortcut, Control S, or you can go File here and then Save, and then it'll save the data for you. I think that's about it. You can do other neat things, so remember again, for presentation purposes, you can do things like, you can insert, is it illustrations? Yep, you can insert a picture or a shape. So if you wanted to put in a squiggle here, let's put in a squiggle to demonstrate that, maybe there is some interesting data that needs to be paid attention to here. We will make this nice big width, and we will change this color to a bright red perhaps, to demonstrate that this is perhaps an obliquity cycle or whatever the case may be. You have a lot of flexibility. Excel is very powerful. If you do have any questions, talk to your tutor about it, and of course review the Mini-URTs as you need to. Thanks guys, see you guys.